Ever get the feeling you've stumbled onto something, I don't know, bigger than it first appears? Like you start digging and it's just layer upon layer of, well, intrigue.
Oh, absolutely. Like that peeling the onion analogy, right? Gets you every time.
Exactly. And this, my friend, this is one of those times we are talking about Costa Rica's Conservatorio de Castella. You've brought a whole stack of documents, articles. It's a lot to unpack. But the bottom line is, this is more than just your average schoolyard squabble.
Oh, way more. It's got everything. Clash of ideologies, potential shady dealings, the future of the arts hanging in the balance. We're talking high stakes here.
High stakes is right. So for our listeners, imagine this. You've got this prestigious institution, the Conservatorio, nurturing young artistic talent since, what, the 50s?
1953, to be exact.
Right, 1953. Kids are practicing their instruments, rehearsing for plays, pouring their hearts into their craft, right? Then, wham, out of the blue, they find out their beloved theater, the Arnoldo Herrera, is being sold. February 28th, 2024. That date will be etched in a lot of people's minds, I think. Because it wasn't just the sale itself, it was the way it went down. No warning, no transparency, no community input whatsoever.
Talk about adding insult to injury. So who's behind this grand sale? Enter the Foundation Conservatorio de Castella.
Led by Gustavo Rojas, the actor. And he's got this whole narrative, right? He claims they were forced into it, that the theater was literally falling apart, that the Ministry of Education had turned a blind eye to their pleas for help. This $3.5 million from the sale, all going towards a brand spanking new theater on the school's main campus in Barral de Heredia. Sounds good on paper, right?
Sure, who doesn't love a shiny new building? But something tells me it's not quite as straightforward as Rojas is making it out to be.
You'd be right about that.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing. This isn't some isolated incident. This sale is like the climax of a power struggle that's been brewing for decades between the school and this foundation.
We're talking years of legal battles, right?
Yeah.
Like some kind of epic courtroom drama playing out in the background.
Exactly. And to really understand the roots of this conflict, we need to go back to the very beginning, to the school's founding in 1953. See, the foundation wasn't established until later, and their whole deal was supposed to be upholding the founder's vision.
Carlos Millet de Castella, the man, the myth, the legend. But therein lies the million-dollar question. What exactly was his vision? Did he intend for the Conservatorio to be a public institution, open to all, or something more, shall we say, exclusive?
2001, the Ministry of Education stepped in, officially declared the Conservatorio a public entity. You'd think that'd be the end of it, right?
Case closed, everyone go home. Not so fast.
Not even close. The foundation, they were not backing down. They took the fight all the way to Costa Rica's highest court, the Sala Constitucional, which, by the way, has the final say on constitutional matters. Talk about taking it to the top.
So, did they win?
They lost that round. But the fact they were willing to go that far just shows you how deep this power struggle runs. And the thing is, this isn't just some abstract legal battle playing out in courtrooms. This is about real people's lives.
Absolutely. We're talking about students, teachers, families, a whole community invested in this institution.
And when you read through the source material, the interviews, the social media posts, you can really sense the raw emotion. There's anger, there's heartbreak, there's a real sense of betrayal.
Especially from the students, I imagine. This isn't just a building to them, it's their second home. They've poured their hearts and souls into their art within those walls.
One student said, "I saw Peter Pan performed on that stage. I dreamed of performing there too. Now that dream is gone." I mean, that really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? They're afraid. Afraid that if the foundation wins, if private interests take over, the Conservatorio will become just another elite institution, accessible only to the privileged few.
It's like this fear that the very soul of the school, this legacy of inclusivity, will be lost. That those who can't afford expensive tuition will be left out in the cold.
Exactly. It's a tangled web, that's for sure. It's almost like they're trying to have it both ways, you know? Claiming to uphold the school's legacy while also making moves that directly contradict what the school and the community actually want.
It's a classic case of doublespeak, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
And speaking of doublespeak, let's talk about Gustavo Rojas for a minute. Because on the one hand, you've got this charismatic actor, passionate about the arts, claiming he's doing this all for the children.
The savior of the Conservatorio, riding in on his white horse.
Exactly. But then you look at his actions, the foundation's track record, and it's hard not to wonder, is he really the hero of this story, or is there something else going on beneath the surface?
Well, let's consider the evidence, shall we? Rojas loves to play up this narrative that the Ministry of Education has abandoned the Castella, that they've been pleading for help for years, that the theater is in such disrepair it's practically condemned.
So he's using that to justify the sale, saying it was the only option left to ensure the student's safety.
Exactly. And he's quick to point out the ministry's inaction. We did some digging, found records showing that last year, in 2023, the ministry admitted they couldn't release funds for repairs because of this whole ownership dispute. Their hands were tied by bureaucratic red tape.
So Rojas swoops in, sells the theater, and positions himself as the savior of the day.
Look at me, he's saying, I'm the only one who cares enough to actually do something.
But not everyone's buying it. In fact, his critics are calling foul, saying this has been his plan all along.
They're saying this isn't about saving the school, it's about lining his own pockets.
And this is where things get really interesting, I think. Remember those plans we saw, those renderings for that massive development project in Sabana Norte?
Plaza Boulevard. The one with the high-rises, the luxury apartments. Oh yeah, I remember. They were hard to miss.
Talk about a prime piece of real estate. And guess what's conveniently located right next door?
The Arnoldo Herrera Theater. What a coincidence, right?
You can't make this stuff up. It's like the stars aligned for Rojas in this sale.
It's almost too perfect to be a coincidence, wouldn't you say? And get this, back in 2023, Rojas himself admitted he was aware of offers being thrown around for that land. That the theater was basically a roadblock for developers.
So they wanted the land, but they couldn't have it with the theater standing in the way.
Bingo. And if that wasn't enough, the lawyer who notarized this whole sale, guess what? He also works for the firm representing those very same developers.
Are you serious? Talk about a conflict of interest.
It's enough to make your head spin. Of course, Rojas is singing a different tune now. He claims the company that bought the theater, which by the way was some limited liability company registered just weeks before the sale, has no intention of demolishing anything.
Oh, of course not. They just happened to buy a property in the middle of a legal battle with no clear plans for its future, purely out of the goodness of their hearts.
Right, because that's how these things usually work. But here's the kicker. The deed of sale itself tells a very different story.
Oh, what does it say?
It explicitly states that the buyer knew they were walking into a legal quagmire, that the property was being used by the state and they were prepared to evict them if necessary.
Hold on, so they knowingly bought a lawsuit waiting to happen.
That's what it sounds like. And get this, the deed goes on to say that if, and it stresses that if, the theater does get demolished, the foundation gets first dibs on scavenging any materials for their new building.
You've got to be kidding me. So they're already planning for the possibility of demolition.
It sure seems that way. It's like they're saying, oh, we don't plan on tearing it down, but if we do, hey, at least we can reuse the scraps.
It's outrageous. But in all of this, what about the students, the parents, the Junta Administrativa? What are they saying about this whole debacle? They can't be happy.
Let's just say they haven't exactly been silent. They're fighting back, and they're not pulling any punches. Oh, they are fired up, and rightfully so. They see right through this whole song and dance, this "we're doing it for the children" act. They're pointing out that the foundation has been practically MIA for decades.
An MIA, meaning?
Missing in action. They haven't invested a single colon in the school for over 20 years. Yet they're quick to swoop in and slam the brakes on any improvements from the ministry with their endless lawsuits. It's like they want the control, the power, but without any of the responsibility.
Talk about having your cake and eating it too. And this whole cloak and dagger routine with the sale, that just adds insult to injury.
The lack of transparency has been appalling. Why not involve the community, the people who this directly impacts? It's their school, their heritage, their children's future we're talking about here.
It's almost like they think they're above accountability.
And that's what's so frustrating. The Castella community is fiercely protective of their school's history, of its founder's vision. They argue that the Conservatorio has always been a public institution, open to everyone, a place where talent, not privilege, determines your worth.
A true meritocracy.
Exactly. And they're terrified that if the foundation seizes full control, that accessibility, that spirit of inclusivity, will vanish.
So it's not just about bricks and mortar, it's about the soul of the school.
Precisely. They're fighting to preserve a legacy that extends far beyond any one building. And, reading through the testimonials, the interviews, you really feel the emotional toll this has taken on everyone involved.
Especially the students. Imagine pouring your heart and soul into your art only to have the rug pulled out from under you like this. It's heartbreaking.
One parent said her daughter was devastated, cried for days after the news broke. This wasn't just a building to these kids, it was a second home.
A creative sanctuary.
Exactly. But they're not taking this lying down. They're organizing protests, speaking out in the media, taking their message to the streets. There was even that powerful demonstration in front of that car dealership, the one that's part of that proposed development.
Wow, right. They were performing right there on the sidewalk, making their voices heard.
It was incredibly moving. And what's remarkable is that this has even transcended political divides. You've got two diputados, Ariel Robles and Ada Acuna, from opposing parties, joining forces to support the Castella community.
Now that's saying something. It really speaks volumes about the gravity of the situation.
Absolutely. They're calling out the sale, questioning the foundation's motives, even introducing a bill to declare the theater's land public property to prevent something like this from happening again.
It's like they're drawing a line in the sand saying enough is enough.
Exactly. They're demanding transparency, not just from the foundation, but from the Ministry of Education as well, because let's be honest, they really dropped the ball on this one.
They were warned, they had a heads up, and yet
here we are. They've launched an investigation, sure, but is that really enough at this point? They need to be held accountable for their inaction.
It's like putting a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. It's just not going to cut it. So where do we go from here? What does the future hold for the Conservatorio de Castella?
It's hard to say for sure. The legal battles will likely drag on and the emotional scars run deep. But there are glimmers of hope. The fact that this has sparked such outrage, that politicians from across the political spectrum are rallying behind the school, it shows that people recognize what's at stake here.
It's a testament to the power of art, wouldn't you say? The way it can unite people, even in the face of adversity.
Absolutely. This isn't just about one school, one theater, one country. This is about recognizing the vital role that art and culture play in our society.
It's about standing up for what you believe in, about protecting our shared heritage, and about ensuring that future generations have the opportunity to experience the transformative power of the arts.
Well said. This whole deep dive has been a real eye-opener, wouldn't you say? It's a story full of twists and turns with no easy answers. But it's also a story about resilience, about the power of community, and about the unwavering belief in the importance of the arts.
It really makes you think about your own role in all of this. What can we do as individuals to support the arts? How can we ensure that institutions like the Conservatorio de Castella don't just survive, but thrive?
Those are the questions we should all be asking ourselves, because the Castella story is far from over, and it's one we'll be following closely.
As always, we want to thank you, art listeners, for joining us on this deep dive. Remember, knowledge is power. Stay curious, stay engaged, and keep fighting for the things you believe in.